Are there any interesting patterns you see in the land business? Any interesting shifts in the market, or what type of cool stuff do you see just being in the position you're in?
Yeah. So I will say we don't really look at the specific lists that come through here. From the beginning, we wanted to make sure that privacy was really front and center with who was using our site. So we don't typically, or actually, no, we don't at all, as far as look at the data and analyze that and find trends. We want that stuff to be private based on what people are doing. But with that, I will say that one of the cool things with our site is we've seen people use it in so many different ways just through support channels and reaching out and saying, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? And whether it's a super finite approach where they're targeting certain little locations all over a certain area, or they're just doing the shotgun approach and pulling certain counties or certain states even, it's been pretty amazing to see the different approaches about that and with different levels of success in all of those approaches too. So probably the one trend that is really most apparent is that there really isn't one right approach. And that's really a beautiful thing, right? So often you see, these land education gurus, quote unquote, or whoever saying this is the only way to do it, or this is how you should get this done, how the best way to go about it. But I mean, from our standpoint, it's personal preference, what works best with your certain process flow. And then I'd say probably the number one thing over and above that is just being consistent, right? Consistently sending out, or calling sellers or just getting the marketing out there, the material out there has really been probably the biggest driver of any success that we've seen. So the approach can be any sort of way you want it, whether that's certain levels, blind offers, neutral letters, ranged offers. It's really just the consistent approach of sending out mail or calling or texting owners is really what's driving deals.
Yeah, well, that's actually mirrors what I see a lot. One of the things I tell people is the first bottleneck for most people is just leads coming in consistently week after week without giant
Yeah.
gaps. And if you get that going, then I mean, I've seen everything work. I've seen people that are pulling little like target markets, rich houses that are right on the coastline all across the US to just, I want to mail everything in the state that's between 1 and 5 acres. It's like people do all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff, and then they're all successful, and
Yeah.
or they're not all successful. That's not what I mean. I mean that there's some people who are successful too, but I've seen different methods, like such a wide range, and so definitely true. It feels like it comes down to how the person operates, like what their style is. Some people like putting in a bunch of work on the front end, a bunch of data analytics on the front end. They want to get real narrow and just go after this real target. And then some people want to just shoot me a bunch of leads and then I'm going to talk through them and sort them with my mouth, basically. So it's like you have the both ends of the spectrum. So if you guys were building a land business, what would your type of style be?
So I'll say just because we do have a land business that we use, I mean, it was really the primary reason why we built Price was for our own business, and it just happened to push it public. But I will say, from our standpoint, we like to reduce risk as much as possible, and the way we see that happening, and the way we do it, is we like to target a bunch of different counties at one time, and we like to target properties that are a little larger in acreage, anything 20 acres and up. And the reason why we go with that approach, and I do want to preface, this is just our approach that we go with. It's not the right one, the best one, just what we're comfortable with, is that if we can target multiple different counties, then if one county happens to strike out, we have other counties that can work, right? And then to that, if we target 20 acres and up, now we're not just pigeonholed into one certain land use. So we don't just have to build on it if it's a half acre lot, right? So now we can build on it, we can subdivide it, we can use it for recreational use. So our goal is to basically minimize the risk and allow us to have as many different opportunities as possible to sell the land to an end buyer. And so that's the way we kind of go about it. Now we jump around and basically find metropolitan hubs that we find that are growing areas. And so we'll shoot for counties around there. But that's kind of our approach right now. And so we go about that way. And again, like I said, it's all about mitigating risk. And that's kind of our approach at the moment, at least.
Yeah, I love that way of thinking about it. That's why I love the land business in general, is because there's people have an angle, and every time I hear an angle, I'm like, oh, Actually, that makes a lot of sense. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
then,
there's another one, yeah.
yeah. And always on top of that, you know, you have your certain filtering for the list. So that can change based on any way you go about it. Right now, we're focusing on, because we have the road access filter, focusing on properties that have road access, and because we have the topography filter, making sure that the properties that we do, going back to the risk mitigation, right? We want to make sure that there's areas to build in case that's the right option. So making sure that there's access to properties, and also that there's enough topography and buildable topography for the end buyer to build on. And so again, I know some people actually make a living on properties that don't have road access or certain weird cliff properties. That's not our approach at the moment, but that's kind of how we go about it. And then obviously, if you're sending mail and then following up with text messages or cold calling, as many different touches as you can get on the potential seller, the more the merrier.
And so do you guys send out blind offers or range offers or neutral letters, or what do you?
Right now, we're sending out blind offers. From our standpoint, we like to go in there with the owner understanding exactly where we're kind of our standpoint, right? And just from an expectation management, again, just because we don't want as much back and forth as someone that may like to talk with the owners and negotiate a little bit more. So we like to have those blind offers in there to get kind of our starting point, and then from there we can negotiate up or down accordingly, obviously. But that's kind of been our approach right now.
And so you're using priced, obviously, and you're pricing a entire data set at once, sending out the mailer, getting responses, and then I don't know if I want to call it retrading, but how often are you going with the price that you offered versus doing underwriting and then coming in with an exact number? What's that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. I will say the properties that we buy are pretty close to what we have as the suggested market price. But yeah, you're right with the approach. We'll again, we built this site for our own specific use, and that was basically to take, you know, the information and our control out of it. So we wanted our algorithm basically to create the prices for us. And so that's exactly what we do. We basically go through the search filtering process just like everyone else. We have our own account and we go through that, pick our areas, select geo pricing for us, choose our offer price, go through the rest of the filtering and download our list. And then we send that out immediately afterwards. And so that was that was really, you know, the core reason why we do it. So we use it as such with that. And then when we get those offer prices or those leads back, then we go through the comp report and verify, did our price make sense? Is it a little off? And again, like I was saying, pretty much the properties that we buy are very close to what our suggested market prices are. Where we do see differences, if kind of like what Ryan mentioned earlier, if there's some sort of different topography change, maybe it's right next to a lake, certain characteristics that are going to alter it a little bit. But with that being said, we do choose counties, we do choose areas with the coefficient of variation a little lower. So the comps should mirror what our prices are going for, and the land should kind of make sense what our valuations are showing. So we go with that.
There's like a sliding scale that I picture in my mind because I'm an econ major, so I've always got like a graph of things in my head. But I think one of the Max, were you econ major also?
I was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they got the graphs in your heads. They're
Oh, yeah.
stuck there now. So, but I have this like scale of, as pricing because so the blind offers is the most expensive, but it's the most targeted. You're going to get a higher conversion rate, higher cost per lead. And that's scaling up to text being on the other end where it's the most lowest conversion rate, but the cheapest contact per lead. And then the cold calling falling a little bit below text, neutral offers below that, et cetera.